Hey nerds, we are going to review and break down the latest episode of X-Men 97, starting now. Welcome to the Nerd Social. I am Colin.
I am David.
And I'm Paula.
Okay, so we are now at episode 8 of X-Men 97. This episode is titled Tolerance is Extinction Part 1. And the spoiler free logline of this episode is that the X-Men must unite to face a new threat. Short spoiler free logline. David, why don't you start us off with your impressions of the latest episode of X-Men 97?
I like this episode, and even though it's the first part, it's a good lead up to the climax or the season finale, and I like how it is so far, and I'm very curious to what's going to lead up to next.
Paula, welcome to our conversation. I know that you've been dying to get your impressions on here. So, what did you think of this particular episode of X Men 97?
I liked it a lot. A lot of shockers from what I'm used to seeing from the X-Men. It was a bit emotional as well. So it was great.
Okay. For me, I love cameos, and we see a lot in this one, and it's been everywhere online. And there was a lot of setup that was involved, but also a lot of reveals that we will get to here in the spoiler free part. And so I think that because of the combination of cameos and story going on, it was a pretty solid episode, but I don't think it matched the intensity of previous episodes that we've reviewed during the season. Overall, I'd say it's pretty solid entry of episode 8. In terms of rating, I am going to give it an 8, which is a road trip. David, what is your rating for X-Men 97 episode 8?
I give it an 8 as well, because like I said, this is a lead up to what's going to happen in the next two episodes in the finale. It didn't reveal a lot of things, but I feel there's going to be a lot more revealing later on in the last two episodes.
Paula, what was your rating for this episode?
Mine was an 8 as well for the same reason. You could tell that a lot more is going to come after this. And this was definitely a setup.
All right, good. So, any other thoughts before we get into spoiler territory from either of you?
Let's
Okay.
dive in.
So, if you like our conversation about X-Men 97 and other content like this, please like, share, and subscribe, and it will help us out tremendously. And so, without further ado, spoilers ahead. We're going to get right to it with the first scene here of Beast, who is bringing up this idea of absolute time. And this was actually introduced in What If. I think it was season 2 of What If with Doctor Strange. And so what it means is that there's certain points in a timeline where it cannot be changed. And so going back to that callback of What If, it was how Doctor Strange was not able to save Christine from dying. And Cable said that he's going to go back multiple times to Genosha to try to stop the atrocity from happening, but he couldn't do anything about it. David, did you have anything to say or add?
All right, I'm going to pull Back to the Future on this because, as Dr. E. Brown says in Back to the Future, time is like one straight line. And then in every line, there's always a point. In other shows that use time travel theme, it's called a singularity point. As in, no matter how much you change, whether you did before or after that point, it's not going to change. It's just like Cable's mentioned to Cyclops saying, when asked him, why do you try to avoid it? And Cable kept saying, I done too many times enough to give up. It feels as if that I'm not supposed to prevent this to happen. Because it's supposed to happen, or something else worse would happen.
Yeah, and it gets to this argument between the two. Not so much argument about the time jump, but this friction between the two. And it was at the beginning of the episode where Jean and Cyclops are still talking to each other about how to best handle the fact that their son is right there, but older, and that how crappy the future is, that he has to come back in time to try to change certain aspects of the future. And so, of course, there's a lot of this friction of abandonment and daddy issue going on between the two. And so they decided that in order to figure out what's going on with Bastion, they would have to do some investigation. And Cable's kind of, I know exactly what I need to know. Let's just get right into it. Whereas Cyclops is being a little bit more cautious about the situation. And which leads to other aspects of exploring Jean's psyche at this time, because this is an exchange of where Nightcrawler and Jean were talking to each other about family. And so it really brought home this quote about blood is blood, but family is a choice. And so I think that was really good to give Kurt's perspective as to how he grew up with Rogue. Anyone else want to chime in about either the last scene or this scene here?
First of all, if everyone's wondering why Rose in the hospital bed, because she overused her powers when she tried to absorb Gyric's memories. She was subdued by the fight with Trask, Sentinel Prime, and Jean is trying to see if she can ease her mind because Rogue is still not able to cope yet again with death and also Magneto and also feeling the guilt. She has a lot of emotions going on. While Kurt, he is a loving brother actually to Rogue. When Jean and Kurt talk about families and their upbringing, when Jean talk about every memory that Madeline Pryor had, especially with Nathan Cable, she can feel it too, from the kick, the cry, and everything. But she knows that it's not really my child, it's Madeline's blood. And Kurt pointed out that he was abandoned by Mystique. Even though he was raised by the great family of the circus, he still feels left out. And then when he met Rogue, he finally feels that he has a family with her. And because they could have been enemies, they both felt abandoned. They both feel they were not wanted or loved enough.
Exactly. I think that's definitely gives Jean a lot of perspective as to how to engage with Nathan, but also with her issues regarding being a mutant, and also her issues with her son. We also, yeah, go ahead, Paula.
And it does also gives a good perspective on memories because she has all of these memories of her son, but yet they're not really hers. And then he goes, does it matter if it's real if you can feel them, remember them as if you were there? So I thought that was a good point.
Definitely. And we see Sylvie coming in, and last time she didn't leave on the best of terms in the previous episodes. And so she's trying to offer olive branch here, but it was almost like a Trojan horse in a way. So we're going to figure out what happens later on. She turns into one of the zombie sentinels that you saw with Trask in the early episodes. But then there was a big backstory that this episode did with Bastion and Jean, Cyclops, and Nathan going to the childhood home in Pennsylvania of Bastion and finding his mother there. And it leads into Jean figuring out his origin story coming from Nimrod. And David, you want to talk a little bit about how this is related to another comic book property? But you can shed some light on that.
Alright, so all of our viewers know that Nimrod put his DNA to the guy there on the left and overwrite his DNA in order to reduce the Bastion, which is a hybrid of human and tech. How Bastion came to be is very similar to the Justice League Unlimited in the episode Epilogue, where Terry McGinnis, aka Batman Beyond, found out that his DNA matches with Bruce Wayne. And even Bruce doesn't even know how the heck that happened until it was revealed that Amanda Waller used Bruce's DNA to overwrite Terry's real dad.
Yeah, it just reminded me they were producing a new Batman for a new generation. So we see here Bastion's childhood is very troubled. He was hearing voices, but also he was hearing all these machines in his head, and he felt as though he was different. And I think that here was a very good dichotomy of those that fall between the cracks and those that got a very good upbringing. Yes, Nathan was abandoned, but he turned out pretty okay. Whereas Bastion did have a family, but at the same time he was outcasted, didn't feel as though he belonged, and so he just turned into this lunatic. And it's just a good dichotomy between those two protagonists, the Cable and Bastion, the parallel lives that they're leading at this point. Yeah, go ahead.
I also want to point out there were some flashbacks where he was told that he would be the strongest mutant, which technically he's not. He has ability as a mutant, but the thing is, he's almost Sentinel. He's just a technoganic hybrid between a human and Sentinel.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why when he showed scenes when he's growing up, his abilities start to flourish. That makes him wonder, am I really human or am I something more? Which the mom says, it doesn't matter, you're you. And then that's when he fully realizes he's growing up that say, I am more.
And then we get to see one of the few cameos, as I mentioned, Doctor Doom is here. And we also see Baron Zemo, which I found very interesting because it's almost like they're creating their own Legion of Doom. So I was like, well, what are they trying to do here? And just to get people grounded, we have not seen Doctor Doom in the MCU. We've seen Baron Zemo in the MCU, but remember that this is from the 90s. So if they are going to try to integrate this into the MCU, which there's been rumors of that, these are most likely going to be variants of some sort. Not the same exact character as you see in live action. Um, so it's just very interesting to see all these cameos. David, you had a little bit of a knock on this guy here. So the setup of this is that Bastion showed Valerie Cooper all the experiments that he's been using on humans to try to get them to be infected with the techno-organic virus so that they can turn into these zombie sentinels. And I said that this was very much like a sentinel cult. And then I also mentioned that it's very similar to some of the dynamics that happen in our real world politics. And David, you said something that was really funny about this particular guy here.
I said that he looks like the anime version of Kid Rock.
Yeah, I mean that this scene was really haunting in a way because it really did bring it back to real world events. The cult of personality and the fact that people are being left behind because of mutants in this case. So there's still this argument back and forth online about, oh, X-Men is too woke or X-Men is this or that, and it has always been like this. And I don't get the sense of how some fans look at it in any other different way besides just some type of social commentary. And this is why we're here. We want to lean into these social commentaries as much as possible. We find out that Bastion's mother is also one of these zombies, and I don't think it was that much of a surprise that she was a zombie because it turned out that he also infected his whole town into these zombie sentinels trying to pursue Scott, Jean, and Nathan. It's pretty haunting that he is that deep into it and he's just so committed to wiping out mutants that he's willing to weaponize civilians, as Valerie Cooper was talking about. Um, and so, because of all these zombies that are appearing, um, Nightcrawler and also Wolverine was featured in trying to protect the mansion. And so you see the classic sword point. And also Wolverine had a very extended action scene that was pretty good. So those people that are complaining about there's not enough Wolverine, he had a good action scene, let's just say that. And I didn't show it here in the clips. Paula, did you want to say anything about any of the scenes or anything about this scene?
The only thing I would say is that it was shocking and troubling how many people were turned. And then the thing about that is they don't remember that they were turned, so they don't know.
Yeah, that is a very good point. We also see another cameo here, Juggernaut, but this is more of turning into Juggernaut. So we saw Quicksilver before. We also see another story here. He almost had to balance three stories with protecting the X Mansion, Scott, Jean, and Nathan, but then also you have Jubilee and Roberto. Here, escaping from the Sentinels because I think Roberto's butler became a zombie Sentinel, and then before that, Roberto's mother was trying to set up a gala to help the victims of Genosha. And then Jubilee and Roberto walking out, then doing some retail therapy, and then they got into it. And we also here get to see Roberto turn into Sunspot, right?
Yeah, let me add another thing. Before Jubilee and Roberto left for retail shopping, there was a confliction that Roberto's mom wanted to make herself look good by helping all the mutants
Right.
in Genosha and making the X-Men look bad. And then Jubilee got really pissed, saying, "Are you
Hmm.
serious?" And she put a note about Gamma and protected and saved the
Right.
survivors.
Yeah, definitely. And then also we had a great action scene between the Summers. I call it the summer family vacation, where they're all together. And there's a nice scene between Scott and Nathan going through with the I beams, and then him fending off the Sentinels with his blaster. And then we had Jean also talking about put on your seatbelt, and then she's like, "Why are you always on my case?" So it was a really cool family dynamic that's building here. Go ahead, David.
I was gonna say the one unexpected thing is when the Blackbird
Mm-hmm.
number 3 was destroyed, and even Gene mentioned it. Chang's pissed at you. This is the third one
Yeah.
in months, and then it turned out that their escape pod is a. I sound like a car geek right now. It's a 1997 Porsche 911 Turbo S. S. And even Cable said, "You got a
Right.
Porsche?"
Yeah, that was pretty
So
cool.
I did not expect. I thought it'd be like an escape pod. I'm like, "That's a
Yeah.
car." And I saw it right away. They attempted to do that type of car. I'm like, okay, this is new. I didn't
Yeah.
expect that.
Paula. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
it was nice to see them fight together. They work well together, and it seemed like they were also having a lot of fun doing it. And that was really the only time that Scott and Cable were not butting heads.
Good point. Definitely. Definitely. That there's a bonding experience. That's why I said it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
summer's family vacation. Yeah. And so this was a very haunting scene here with Valerie. This is where she actually released Magneto, and then she was captured by Bastion, and Bastion stringed her up. And then she mentioned that the attack of Genosha wasn't surprising, the murder wasn't surprising, the genocide wasn't surprising, and that people really took for granted about what Magneto said about the relationship between human and mutants. And at the end, she said very hauntingly that Magneto is right. And it really reminded me of, again, another real life allegory to how we react to violence in the United States and how we're almost desensitized. And it just brought it back to me in a very visceral way that she presented that type of dystopian world of a non coexistence between human and mutants. I just want to hear your thoughts about her words. Either one of you can chime in about that.
Yeah, it wasn't surprising, not because of Magneto, but because it's been repeating itself over and over again. And humans not learning from our mistakes,
Mm-hmm. Right.
right? So why are we expecting a change when this is what we do?
Mm-hmm.
It was nice to see that she supported, in a sense, Magneto,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I feel like a lot of times villains, a lot of times I agree with them. Like they make sense, right? They may not go about it the right way, but the reasoning makes sense. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was nice for me to see someone else actually seeing it and agreeing with
Mm-hmm.
that.
Very well put, Paula. David, did you have anything to say about her words?
I agree because this was what we take for granted because back in the trial of Magneto in
Mm-hmm.
episode 2, I believe, where he talked to the UN Council saying that we never wanted to be like this and we never wanted you guys to fear us. You brought this to
Mm-hmm.
yourselves and you have to trust us or else things will
Right.
get worse. And it did get worse. Hence, Val Cooper says
Mm-hmm.
Magneto's right. In the very beginning of this season, Magneto tried to be the
Mm-hmm.
leader of the X-Men, like Project Zero, because when he was leading the Brotherhood, it
Right.
didn't really work. Like Asteroid M, for example, he tried that. It was succeeding and then
Mm-hmm.
failed. And now this one here, history is repeating itself again, and it infuriated Magneto. Hence, he said, "Enough!" And create a global
Right.
EMP, basically, to took down all the zombie mutants, or at least subdue them for now. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And he did warn them, don't make me disappoint you.
Yeah. Definitely. And so this is what happened with the EMP, as David mentioned. And because of the EMP blast, we get to see Spider Man. And this was confirmed by one of the writers, Bo DeMeo, that this is Spider Man 98 from the Fox series that we love and adore back in the day. Same guy. And we also see Silver Samurai. So those of you that are not familiar with him, he is an antagonist to Wolverine. He was also presented in live action The Wolverine, which they changed a lot of the backstory to fit whatever narrative they had. Um, and then we see another Wolverine nemesis, Omega Red, come back to life. And then at the end, we find out Wolverine was saying, everything's going to crap. What are we going to do? We need the professor right now. And lo and behold, the professor then crash lands with the Shi'ar ship and lands and asks the X-Men to come to meet with him. Just like in the episode 1 title, To Meet My X-Men. Pretty awesome stuff here. But again, a big cliffhanger. And we shall see what's going to happen with how Xavier experiences this fallout with Magneto triggering the EMP and all the aftermath of that. But even Wolverine said that we're probably going to be going to war. What are your impressions of Xavier's return? Either one of you can start to talk about that.
We don't know how it's gonna happen because right now we saw Xavier literally drop from the sky and jump into action right away because when he was back at the Shi'ar Empire home world, he really know what's happening, and he rushed into action again. We don't know what's gonna happen because I know that maybe in the next episode we'll see Xavier seeing what the damage is caused from the genocide in Genosha and what's happening right now, and see what happened with school and learn of the deaths of everyone else. Like Gambit and the Man Employer and a few other mutants that he probably knows right now. Right. We're just gonna see what happens though.
Paula, did you want to say something about
Colleen?
Xavier's return?
For me, I'm really curious to see if he's going to change his stance on just peace. He's probably not, but I'm really hoping that he's gonna give some type of pushback and some type of fight. At least move closer to Magneto's stance.
And yeah,
because a lot of damage has been done. So I'm really hoping that he's just not peace, kumbaya.
Yeah, and we've seen that type of Xavier before in the series, where when the chips are down, there are moments where when you have to fight, you have to fight. And so hopefully we get that sense because I think that Magneto's has always been the initiator and Xavier's always been the reactor. And so now it'll be very interesting to see how is Xavier going to react to this. Is he going to say kumbaya, like you mentioned, or is he going to say, screw all this, we're going to really go to war and try to find some type of end game with this season 1. So, any final... go ahead, Paula.
Yeah, do you guys think that there will be some type of going back in time so that none of this happened?
That's
a good point. I have a theory of something relating to Gambit. That maybe that Cable, like I said before, that what happened in Genosha is a singularity point. Like no matter what you try to change in the past before the events, it won't do anything. So my guess is that maybe Cable and Bishop can go back in time and tell, for example, Gambit and a few other characters saying, hide, get out, or something like that. And then it will be like a time jump to him. It will appear out of nowhere saying that, hello, did I miss anything? That's one theory. Who knows? Because this is a long time-related stuff. Bastion is the product of a future version of a Sentinel, same as Cable and Bishop. So we'll see what happens, though.
Yeah, I think that when things get really bad, they'll do the time travel, just like what it was in the Avengers. I wouldn't count it out because it seems as though their options are very limited to how they're going to correct a lot of the bad blood and a lot of the ill will that's happened, and because of all the escalation that has proceeded. But again, they've surprised me before where they'll come up with something and then you say, oh, they stuck the landing and we'll take it from there. But yeah, it's a very interesting question, Paula, that you raised, and we shall see what happens in the last
Yeah.
2 episodes. Any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I have one
Mm-hmm.
quick thought because this episode, when I was reading it, it hit me in the head of the 1997 comic saga called Operation
Mm-hmm.
Zero Tolerance, and it's loosely based on that. There are some hints from the original comic book, but there are some things that are changed, but what would make sense to
Mm-hmm.
this season. I have a feeling that what it might lead to at the end, but by again, it could change. We don't know. Because I know what, in the comic book, I know what's going to happen to Bastion, but we don't know what the writers and the creators of this X-Men series are going to do to it. Hence, we have to wait till the next 2 episodes, leading to the finale, see
Right.
what's next.
Right. Okay. That's all we think about X-Men 97, Episode 8. So we would like to hear what you have to say about it. So comment down below. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you in the next video. All right. Bye now.